So thank you for joining us for this last panel. I'm excited to be speaking with you. Joe, you feel like you're very far away.
I know.
But let's do some quick introduction. Let's start with you, Jennie.
Hi, I'm Jennie Sanders. I'm the Vice President of Experiential Product Management at Western Governors University. I've been there for about 12 years, starting as a faculty member in biochemistry, and have been working in the innovation realm for over 6 years.
Thank you for being here. Paul.
Hi, Paul Bingham, Senior Vice President and Executive Dean of WGU's School of Technology.
And Joe.
Joe Fuller. I'm a professor at Harvard Business School, and at Harvard I founded our two large research projects on the future of work. And as fate would have it, I'm the chairman of the board of trustees of Western Governors University and a director of AeraTechnology. So
So you're in the right spot in that right panel.
Yes, this is like a family reunion.
This is fantastic. Joe, stay with you for a second. Talk a little bit about your work and the Future of Work initiative that you've been leading at Harvard.
Well, we started looking at future work as a byproduct of some research we did on the declining competitiveness of the US economy. And what we pretty quickly came up with, most of the research, this is almost 15 years ago now, most of the research that was being generated about the future of work was narrow and deep, but it wasn't terribly actionable. Skills acquisition, education to employment transitions, reskilling, upskilling, upward mobility, those phenomena cut across lots of different disciplines. They don't line up well with a university or a business school. So what we did was, in one instance at the business school where my faculty appointment is, we started saying, what are the types of issues that executives ought to know more about? And rather than try to publish scholarly papers, we started trying to analyze those specific questions and give them insight that might allow them to make better decisions. And then a few years later, we started a project across several different schools at Harvard, trying to look at upward mobility, skills acquisition, the skills gap, through a multidisciplinary lens with people from our ed school, people from our John F. Kennedy School of Government, the business school, and our economics department. And we've been publishing papers that are really designed from both of those to be things that a normal user, an executive, a cabinet secretary, a head of a NGO or a not-for-profit that works in skills can read and understand and take something from, as opposed to a scholarly journal article could be fabulously intelligent, but you have to understand Greek letters and equations to know what they're saying.
Thank you, Joe. We'll come back to that in a minute. But Jennie and Paul, I became a fan, you know, Jennie, of WGU since we've started working together, and I got to understand more WGU and your vision, your goal. Can you talk a little bit more about this?
Sure. You want me to jump in?
Yeah, go for it.
In 1997, the Western Governors Association, think of everything sort of west of the Mississippi, got together and said, we need to do something different or more effectively help working adults who have good job experience, great life experience, and often some education, but lacking a college degree. And in 1997, they said, there's this thing called the internet. Maybe we could use it somehow to help educate these people. So this great experiment started, and now hundreds of thousands of graduates later, WGU is still serving working adults with some or no college experience, and also now becoming the college of first choice for very young adults who have just graduated from high school and are saying, I want an education that is competency-based, that I can work asynchronously, and that prepares me directly for careers.
What does that mean, Jennie, competency-based? That's fundamental pillar of how you enable that knowledge to be transferred.
Yeah, if you think about a traditional college experience, you have the semester, right? And you have multiple courses, and you're going through the semester. Every course is 16 weeks or 14 weeks, depending on the school. And at the end of that semester, you have students who come out with different levels of learning. And sometimes that's demarcated as a grade, right? And so we like to flip that, and instead of holding time constant and learning being variable, we try to hold the learning constant. and let the time vary depending on the student. So if you're a student coming in with experience in a field, for example, you might take some of your early courses and it's stuff you already know. Well, we don't make you sit through 16 weeks. Instead, you can actually take the assessment, demonstrate that you have this competency already, and then move forward and spend more time in the courses that you don't already know. So when we say competency-based, that's what we mean, is that we're holding a high standard of learning, but the learners get to determine how much time they're spending in any particular course or area.
I think it's so brilliant, super smart model. We'll come back to that. So Joe, you are studying all the forces that are reshaping the workforce, and right now those forces are pretty strong. Can you guide us a little bit what you're seeing today, and what's top of mind for the executives that you support, coach? I know you see it on numerous boards. What do you see? What's the evolution as automation and AI are continuing to accelerate?
We certainly have several phenomena that we haven't witnessed working in tandem before. A lot of workplaces have 4 generations of workers, and some even 5, where each of those generations has a different perspective on work, the role of work in their lives, a different attitude about what they are owed by their employer and what they owe the employer, which is creating a real management challenge. At the same time, we have very changing workforce demographics. Workforce is basically stable in the United States. It's shrinking in most of our peer competitors, shrinking dramatically in some of them, with no real prospect unless you think we're going to have a sensible bipartisan immigration strategy in the future, in which case I actually own a bridge over that river in the background of Harvard, which I'm forced to sell to raise cash. So talk to me after the after the session. And then of course we've got AI emerging, and we're beginning to see some very real impacts in the labor force on that. Generative AI is good at what's called routine cognitive work, and we're seeing particularly early stage workers and everything from customer service representatives to individual contributors in software companies, usually software engineers, junior software engineers, have a big downdraft in the number of job postings for them and higher unemployment rates than we've seen historically. For years we told young people, you got to learn how to code. We actually got that wrong, because what generative AI does is displace a lot of those technical tasks. Many of you will be familiar with things like Cursor and Copilot that are really improving software engineers' productivity. Rather than saying you ought to learn software, we should have actually been saying you ought to learn or focus on developing soft skills. Human skills, the ability to be productive with others. It's not just EQ, although that's part of it. It's the ability to negotiate, spontaneous communications, written and oral, go into an unfamiliar setting and be productive. As technology displaces a lot of hard tasks, the skills that employers are going to be looking for are going to be more weighted toward those social skills than they have been historically, because the technology is going to do an increasing amount of those hard tasks people were acquiring when they were in those semesters that Jennie was talking about. So the basis for evaluation of candidates is going to change. What's important to come out of your educational experience to be able to do, which is what people are going to care about. They don't care what you think you learn. They care about what you can do. That is changing. And it's going to, as we'll maybe talk about a little later, it's also going to have long-term implications for the existing workforce.
So stronger on the soft skills, on the experience, which is obvious. But there is also another dimension, Joe, that and everyone, that we've heard about this morning, is today organizations are structured in silos, driven by the need to have the technical knowledge to operate within a specific process, right? But we're talking about the fact that these new technologies, decision intelligence being one of them, are going to start forcing decisions to be made across the value chain. So how do you reconcile that need to understand broader that means learning on a broader scale without being so technical. How do you reconcile that? We can start with you.
Well, maybe I'll start. And
Yeah,
then,
maybe Paul as well. Jennie.
I think that what we're seeing now is a shift in the way we should understand the implications that's happening technologically. For the last couple of years, if you'd asked me 18 months ago, what do you think is going to happen? The first thing I say, well, I don't know, maybe I'll ask Paul, but I think the LLMs are going to win. Wrong. And that we're going to need a lot of people with prompt engineering skills. Partially right. What I'd say now is we're going to need people who have context engineering skills. And by that I mean they understand the context of the process they're working in, but they also understand the broader context of the company they work for, everything from its values and cultures to its strategy, the context of the market that they're competing in or the phenomena they're working in. It could be a scientific phenomena. And that kind of integration is what's going to be required rather than that narrow and deep experience in the siloed organization Fred was talking about. One last thought, I think we're beginning also to see through tools like decision intelligence, decision makers and companies escape a pattern of error that they were pursuing previously, which is, I'm going to try to append the AI to my existing process to make my existing process more efficient. That's the wrong framing. This technology is so powerful and so fundamental, you have to go back to the first principles about your process and ask how I'm going to reconfigure the process to integrate across all those different silos to get to an entirely new level of efficiency and effectiveness, which I think is the promise of decision intelligence.
If you had asked me at the birth of say, when ChatGPT launched and generative AI became commonplace, instead of giving an answer, I asked a question back, which I find
Smart.
is a great way. And my question routinely was, so do you think it's going to be the microwave oven, which I'm old enough to recall when our family first got a microwave oven in the 1970s, and it was going to be the appliance that replaced everything in your kitchen. You no longer needed an oven, a stove, a toaster. It was going to do it all. And in fact, all it ever did and continues to do is sit alongside everything else and make them more efficient. So the question was, is it going to be a microwave oven or is it going to be the iPhone? Or for those of you who are still using some other product, a smartphone. Not a paid endorsement. And, but that has systematically just rendered all kinds of other devices obsolete. And in the few years since the launch of generative AI broadly, I think the answer that I would give is neither. It's going to be more like electricity. And it's going to run through everything that you do. And I think the only thing that I would add to that is that as the technology becomes more advanced, so does the level of intuitiveness of the tools. And so for those of you that are designing them, for those of us who are consuming and leveraging those technologies, it's an interesting balance between, well, you know, back to the smartphone, we don't read operating manuals, we just pull it out and use it. And there's this almost symbiotic relationship between us and the technology where, well, I just want it to do what I want it to do, and then over time, it teaches me what I want it to do.
What you want it to do, yeah. So Jennie, and when you think about WGU, so we're talking about a different experience that students need to get. So how do you adjust your learning and what you basically teach to enable that new workforce to work in this new environment?
Yeah, it's a really interesting situation for us at WGU because we want to be able to verify competency. We want to do that in a way that is equitable across all people, which means our assessments need to be relatively consistent, but we have all the flexibility we could want, honestly, when it comes to how you actually get to that competency. Right now, we have a master curriculum that we use, but one of the things that I think AI can help us to do in decision intelligence as well, when we're thinking about how we're supporting students, is to take, we talk a lot about context with AI. I like to think about context with teaching, of the individual student that you're teaching. And how do we provide the right types of support, the right type of content, the right type of challenge, so that they're really building the type of skills that we need them to have, and not removing what I would call productive friction of learning. And that's something that it does require a lot of understanding, a lot of context. And that's one of the things that I think decision intelligence is helping us to do, is to understand where is the student, what's needed right now for them to reach competency, and then provide them what they need to do to, what would work for them, I should say, so they can really build that, demonstrate it, and continue to evolve that skill set.
So let's dig in. You've deployed Era.
Yes.
I had a call from Joe, actually, who was working with us today. He had deployed Era at Dell, and he called me and he said, I think there is a use case here for decision intelligence, but it's for WGU. Like, okay, well, it's a platform. I think we can do it. And I'd love for you to explain a little bit. You're the first university to deploy decision intelligence at scale, from what I know. So I'd love for you to share a bit that experience. What goal did you have? How did you go about it? What results are you getting?
Yeah.
Can you share that with us?
Absolutely. And again, thanks to Joe Deary for the central insight.
Joe is everywhere.
Yes.
The other Joe.
Well, this one too. I mean, we got two Joes.
Both. Really
we love both
Joes.
Joes.
Joe squared. So the thinking about, lots of you are in supply chain. Obviously, decision intelligence is very readily applicable to supply chain. But we were thinking about in a student journey, and especially if it's a digital student journey, which we are fully online, sorry. And so we essentially have a digital student journey. It's not that different. There are so many things, so many analogies that we could use to approach that. So one of the first things we did, another thing around decision intelligence is, as a framework, you start with the outcome you're looking for. And that's really important, because so often we talk about, we have this process, how do we make this one little process better, more efficient? And decision intelligence allows us to think, we really want this outcome. How do we need to rethink things so that we can get to that outcome, and how can technology help us to get there? So, of course, you can't boil the ocean, so you have to start with one. So we chose a specific pain point for some of our students. And this was for students who are newer, they're in their first kind of term with us, that if they take their first objective assessment, so a test, and they don't pass it, some of them, we serve about 70% of our students are from underserved populations. Many of them have had pretty negative experiences in education. And so if they didn't pass that assessment, it would be taken as a signal that they don't belong, they can't do this, which is the last thing we want, because we believe every human can learn, right? We all have potential.
Of course.
And so we thought, well, okay, right now when they don't pass, we react to that. We provide some outreach and some support, but sometimes it's almost too late. They've made that decision for themselves. So how do we move upstream? How do we rethink those processes, get smarter, get better earlier in that journey?
So when those students, sorry to interrupt,
Yeah,
when those students feel that they don't belong, they basically drop.
Yes, they drop.
That's
They
what
leave.
happens, right? So
They do.
I start working, I don't pass the test, to make things very simple, and I say it's not for me, I don't belong, and I drop.
Right.
That's the problem you were trying to address.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. And we were also starting to see that even when students were in courses, they sometimes they would be working in a course and just not take the assessment. There was like some fear around that assessment. So we wanted to design a skill that would allow us to understand, if for a student in these courses at any given time, how likely are they to pass the assessment based on what we're seeing in the way that they're engaging, their formative assessments, things like that. And then with that information, also, what's the likelihood, we called it a resilience index, that if they were to take it and not pass, what's their likelihood of drop? Because there are some signals there too. And then we had a number of other data points we put in there. And we actually created a decision that surfaces to a recommendation to instructors in those courses to say, here's a prioritized list of students who, based on what we know about them today, either they're ready, please encourage them to go ahead and take that assessment, don't put it off, they can do it, or work with them on some of these areas so that they are ready to take the assessment. And what we saw, so we launched this in about 10 courses, and it was only around 20,000 students to begin, which for us is small. We have almost 200,000 students right now. But what we saw was quite remarkable. We did, in fact, see that students were attempting the assessment at a higher rate, they were passing that assessment at a higher rate, and they were completing their courses and continuing on their journey. And I know on the slide you'll see, an 8%, this is actually percentage point increase in pass rate. That's a tough number to move in education.
I think your intention initially was lower than that, right?
Yeah, we were like,
You would
oh, we
have
think we can
declared-
get to like maybe 4%.
You were
right?
declaring success with pretty
Yes.
much half of that.
Yes, exactly. And what we saw much higher than that. So this has been quite exciting. We're expanding it now. We just actually last week expanded it to twice as many courses with a goal to have it in many of those courses by the end of our fiscal year. And then, continue to expand. So
I think this deserves a bit of applause because this is just, this really is remarkable. It moves me. I mean, I think the impact of knowing that the technology that we built helps improve that rate, it means a lot. It's sincerely important that we do that and we do that well. So I commend you for your leadership, both of you, in driving the project and getting to results.
Yeah. Can I add one piece to that?
Of course.
The students who are benefiting the most are actually the students who are coming to us with the most barriers.
Yeah.
So it's doing exactly what we're hoping they would do in terms of more equity in education.
Yeah, but this is not a small comment you just made here. Talk a little bit, Jennie, before we move to the next question about, now we're going to go into the pragmatic, like how long it took. Talk a little bit about the implementation, how difficult it was, easy it was, high level.
Yeah, so we started working with Era to build out that first skill. It was actually October of last year, and we had our first release of that, released to faculty members by mid-December, so about 2 months.
Pretty fast.
It was pretty fast. And then, of course, we've improved it over time and expanded it out over time as well. And we started to see positive results about 3 months in. And then we've just been tracking that over time, and after 9 months, we saw the numbers continuing to increase.
So that's a fantastic use case of decision intelligence. Paul, what are the other areas where you are leveraging AI to improve the student journey, to improve the impact of the education that you're able to deliver?
Yeah, we are, in addition to decision intelligence, we are utilizing AI in nearly every aspect of our craft. We are offering in our degree programs the sort of building blocks of AI. I think what's coming up on the screen here is one of our master's programs that's actually in data analytics that has a specialty in decision process engineering, which aligns remarkably with the work that you and your teams do. Joe Derry might have had a hand in building that project before
Joe Derry is everywhere, my friend.
He is everywhere. He's the electricity that runs through everything.
He's the new DI.
We are, of course, in our computer science and software engineering programs, teaching the fundamental building blocks of AI and ML. And then in all of our other programs that slide more toward the application of technology, cybersecurity, for example, helping students understand how to actually use this to be more prepared on day one in the workplace.
Yeah, fundamental. Thank you. Again, I'm such a fan of what you guys have done. I said I committed to coming to one of the graduation ceremony, and I will do it because I want to be there. Joe, how do you see innovations like DI and AI transforming the education landscape? We talk about, I said that earlier, I think, learn, unlearn, and relearn. But this is not a joke. Like, we're at this critical point in time where even I, in my job, where I'm in the tipping point of that technology, I have to read more and learn more than I've done for years.
Yes. Yep.
So let's talk about that, all of us, right? So how is it redefining how people learn? How you educate? You guys are educators. You train people. Talk to us about it.
Let's separate in education for a second from continuous learning, because I think those are two very different things. In education, we're still looking for the bottom of the swimming pool with our toes. You've got universities like WGU that have been both learning how to teach the technology, but also how to apply the technology. And for those who you don't know, WGU is the largest university in the United States by enrollment. Almost 200,000 enrolled students right now. So this is not...
it's big scale.
It's big scale. 450,000 graduates now, I think.
Yeah, I like to say, largest university that nobody's heard of.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
The best university nobody's ever heard of.
But delivering a full degree in under 2.5 years on average for around $20,000. So it's a very high impact institution, very proud of it. in K through 12 education, you've got districts that are next to each other that are following different rules. Some are trying to use it as a teaching vehicle. Others are saying absolutely not. There's a very great risk that it'll become both a tool for avoiding having to learn general knowledge. Why bother learning the state capitals if I can just ask my phone? But by the same token, it'll level to a great extent the gaps in general knowledge that we see across stratas of society. We're very close to Raj Chetty and his research, and Khan Academy you'll also have heard of. And those things, Khan Academy right now is working very, very hard to try to create AIs which are simultaneously informing the teacher about the learning patterns of their students and not allowing the students to bypass the thinking part of interacting with it, but being much more of a mentor and a prompter of their thinking, as opposed to, here are the 7 causes of the United States Civil War that you can now copy and paste and pass off as your own homework. We have one of the distinguished universities in the United States, Ohio State University, I think very boldly saying they're going to become an AI-first university without really knowing what that means. And I don't say that to be dismissive. I think that's bold, and they've kind of burned their ships to invoke Hernando Cortez. So they're moving they've committed to moving in that direction, and I think you'll see other universities go that way. I want to introduce a different theme, though, about continuous learning and how this is going to change things. Historically, before you made the transition to full-time employment, you tended to learn in formal settings. You went to school, you got academic credentials, employers evaluated those on those credentials. But once you had that final exam or that final paper you had to submit or that final project, you were kind of done with school. How many of us had that great celebratory moment? I don't have to go to school anymore. It wasn't a celebration for me. Kind of the only thing I've ever been really good at is going to school, so kind of miss it. But and then you went to work, and almost all your learning was basically on the job. You might have some vendor-supported training, but basically you learn by ingestion, by assimilation, kind of a apprenticeship type model, not a formal apprenticeship program, but you had a boss, you observed what she did, you learned from her, then maybe she got promoted and you got her job, and now you're learning from her again, or a new boss, and you're trying to groom your subordinates, how we do things around here and how that process actually works, and things like that. So formal education one, experiential learning we call the latter, what I was talking about in terms of on-the-job training. My proposition to you is those are going to invert.
Okay.
That education can't possibly keep up with the rate of change in technology. Even a very technologically adept, kind of native digital, native cloud university like WGU is going to have its challenges. And if you're talking about a liberal arts college or K through 12 system, we're here in New York, forget about it. It's just not doable. The education system's not built for speed. So we're going to have people be work ready. We're going to have more experiential learning in their background. And the reason for that is that the employers are not going to be able to rely on the academic credentials to be as reliable as they have been in the past. But also, remember what I said about social skills. They're going to want to have a kind of a live understanding of who this individual is, as opposed to they're a 3.5 from a well-reputed university from the relevant major, because that's going to increasingly determine job success. The inversion, of course, is that formal training, bursty, intense learning on the job is going to become more important. And the reason is the half-life of learning how to use a bunch of technologies, actually the half-life of the technologies is kind of approaching the time it takes to master the technology. You can't rely on on-the-job training if you're going to be taking out the technology that the majority of your workforce just finished mastering to replace it with something else. So we're going to have to get much better at delivering training at scale quickly. Now, AI and things like simulation will help us do that. I don't think it's a lost cause. But the entire construct of how we convey what's going to be important for you to know, whether you're an 18-year-old or a 55-year-old, and how we deliver it, I think, is going to have to get revisited. And that's a pretty important consideration because companies are not good at this. They don't really, a few are, professional services firms tend to, because they're more used to that quick changes, but very few large companies, and certainly small and medium enterprises, are set up to do this well. So it's going to be a big challenge in remaining the productivity of our society to be able to match that. But as in most things with technology, those companies and employers that start trying to solve the problem sooner are going to have an advantage.
Wow. This is fascinating, and I think the continuous learning is not, as you said, is not a nice to have, it's going to be a must have. I want to thank you all for the panel. I want to thank you for the partnership and congratulate you on the great success that you experienced. If you want to hear more about Joe's work, I highly, highly recommend that you subscribe to his podcast. Joe is a podcaster. I didn't know he was an amazing podcaster. So Managing the Future of Work, you've got the link here. Well, thank you very, very much for joining us today and for those insights. Thank you.
Great.